Hey y'all, it's Amanda. Welcome back to my channel, and today we're going to do another video all about what you need to know to get started building good teams for VGC. So stick around. So if you haven't already, make sure you go check out my first video in this team building series that covers sort of the more philosophy and general aspects of how to start out building a team. I'm going to assume that you've already learned about all of that and you know exactly where to start from for this video. This video is going to be a little bit more in depth in some of the more technical aspects. So I'll link the other video up here and make sure that you've watched it first. So there's three main topics I want to cover today, and we'll probably do another video even later talking about some other more detailed topics. So today we're going to cover type coverage on your team, move sets of each of the Pokemon on your team, and speed control. All of these things are super important to make sure that you have covered in your team. So first up is type coverage. Your team needs to be able to take on opposing Pokemon of a variety of different types. And that doesn't just mean making sure that you have a super effective move against every type in the game. That's not what it means. Remember that good typings on a team require that your team has a favorable matchup against other Pokemons that you're likely to encounter. This means Pokemon that are popular in the metagame. So things like poison or bug types that you're less likely to come across, you don't necessarily need a super effective move against those types because they're so rare to find in competitive play. So as far as offensive typing goes, if a Pokemon appears on 60% of teams, let's say something like Incineroar or Zacian, and you have a Pokemon that resists those powerful attacks, so something that's going to resist the fire type attacks from Incineroar, the steel type, the fighting type attacks from Zacian, and your Pokemon can do something useful in return against those Pokemon, it's going to be a good member of your team because its typing allows it to really take on very common threats in the meta. However, even if you may have a good offensive typing against the meta, your Pokemon might be held back by its defensive typing. If your Pokemon has a lot of weaknesses and hardly any resistances, or even some 4 times weaknesses to common attacks, then you won't really be able to rely on it to take attacks well or to switch in if necessary. So if you need that Pokemon as an offensive Pokemon, it might not be the end of the world if it has a bad defensive typing, but you might be a little bit boxed in on when you can switch your Pokemon in and out, and you might lose some momentum in your games because of it, because you'll have to sacrifice one of the Pokemon on your team for a safe switch in for that offensive Pokemon instead of being able to maybe hard switch during a turn. Next up is movesets. Now, most Pokemon will either have a move that's one of 2 types. Either it'll be a damage dealing move, or it'll be sort of a utility move, a support move. When thinking about whether a move is a utility move or not, make sure that you're thinking about whether the purpose of this move is to do damage or if the purpose is another goal. So look at like Colossal and Dragapult, for example. Dragapult runs Surf when it's paired with Colossal in order to activate Colossal's Steam Engine and Weakness Policy. Now, Surf is a move that does damage, but because Dragapult's special attack is so low, it's not that we're trying to do damage with the move Surf, it's that we're using the Surf to activate Colossal's Weakness Policy and its Steam Engine. So in this case, Surf on the Dragapult would probably be considered a utility move as opposed to a damaging move. So generally, movesets on a Pokemon will be something like Protect, or maybe some other support move if it's a Pokemon that doesn't typically run Protect. Their Stab Attack 1, then a second Stab Attack, or maybe some coverage moves, and then maybe the 4th move might be either coverage move on an offensive Pokemon or utility move on a support Pokemon. A quick reminder while we're talking about movesets as well, stab moves are generally preferable over coverage moves because stab moves, which stands for same type attack bonus, are moves that are the same type as the Pokemon's typing, and these moves get a 50% increase in the damage that they do. So there's some moves that you want to have on most teams if you can fit them on. These are very common moves that you're going to see all the time. The first one obviously is Protect. Almost every Pokemon is going to make great use of Protect unless it's carrying something like a choice item or Assault Vest. So if you're having a hard time picking that 4th move, maybe just put Protect on it. Other types of moves that I want to put on nearly every team would be moves that influence speed, meaning speed control. We'll talk about this more in a second in our next section on speed control, but basically speed control can keep you from losing games due to bad luck and give you more control over the pace of the game and momentum. They're critical. Next up is redirection. Redirection is like the moves Follow Me or Rage Powder, which basically redirect the opponent's attacks and force them to target the Pokemon that used Follow Me or Rage Powder for that turn. Rage Powder and Follow Me are basically the same exact moves, except Rage Powder doesn't work on any Pokemon that are immune to powder moves. This is all grass types, safety goggles, Pokemon with Overcoat. Generally, you want to put redirection moves on a Pokemon that has really high defensive stats because their goal is to tank as many hits as possible to keep their partners alive. So this is things like Amoonguss with Rage Powder or Indeedee with Follow Me. Next up is Fake Out. Fake Out is one of the reasons that Incineroar is such a great Pokemon. It's a very weak priority move with a +3 priority, meaning it moves before even most other priority moves. And it will 100% flinch the target every single time, except this move only works on the very first turn that a Pokemon is on the field. This means that the Pokemon that can make the best use of Fake Out are ones that are really bulky and can ideally have some way of switching out cleanly. So either they have U-turn or Parting Shot, they carry an eject button, or they've got the move Volt Switch. That way the Fake Out user can switch in and out multiple times, and then they can use Fake Out multiple times. And finally, another very common utility move that's great to have on teams is Taunt. Taunt is used to stop Pokemon that rely on their support moves, like Trick Room setters, Follow Me users, Pokemon that want to put you to sleep like Amoonguss, or Pokemon that want to recover lost health like Porygon 2. Keep in mind that Taunt also prevents your opponent from using Protect. So if you have maybe a very bulky Pokemon carrying leftovers that's protecting a lot to try to regain health, you can really cut that down in its tracks by taunting them so that they can no longer use Protect. And next up are some moves that are a little more situational. You wouldn't want to fit them on every single team, but they can be incredibly helpful in specific circumstances. So this is things like status moves. These are moves that inflict a status condition on the opponent, either sleep, burn, freeze, paralysis, or poison. Keep in mind, though, that these are not all equal. You know, freeze is amazing, but it's very difficult to consistently get freeze off. It's only triggered as a low percentage secondary effect, so it's not consistent at all. Next best is sleep. Sleep will totally incapacitate a Pokemon for 1 to 3 turns, and it's much more consistent to get off with moves like Spore and Sleep Powder. The next best is going to be Burn. Burn is great because not only does it give you passive chip damage, but it will have the damage that physical attackers do. So players can use a move like Will-O-Wisp to inflict it pretty consistently. Then you've got Paralysis, which used to be really good, but now electric types no longer are able to be afflicted with Paralysis, so it's not quite so good. Paralysis drops the speed of a Pokemon by half, plus gives it a 1 in 4 chance to be fully paralyzed and unable to move. So it's actually a really good status condition, especially if you've got a little bit of luck on your side. In my opinion, the worst of the status conditions is Poison. It only gives you passive chip damage. It doesn't give you any other secondary effect, and frankly, VGC battles just don't often last long enough that Poison is going to make a measurable difference in the outcome of the game. So next up is moves like Screens. This is Reflect, Light Screen, or Aurora Veil. These are really powerful support moves that decrease the damage coming into your side of the field to 2/3 of their original value. Keep in mind, though, that strategies that rely on screens are typically really weak to critical hits because a critical hit ignores the reduction of damage that screens provide, and teams that rely on screens really can't handle a hit at full strength a lot of the time. Next up is stat dropping moves. These moves, as you might guess, lower 1 or more of your opposing Pokemon's stats to help disrupt their game plan and give you the momentum you need to just wreck right through them. The most common of these moves is going to be things that lower the opponent's speed, like the move Scary Face. Other moves might be something like Fake Tears, which is going to lower your opponent's special defense 2 stages and allow your partner special attacker to more easily pick up KOs. Things like Eerie Impulse can lower the opponent's special attack by 2 stages, thereby better protecting your Pokemon from special attacks. And then Breaking Swipe, which is much less common, will lower both of the opposing Pokemon's attack stats by only 1 stage. Next up is setup moves. These moves are going to boost either your own Pokemon's offensives or defenses. The most successful Pokemon that use setup moves typically raise their offensive stats with a move like Swords Dance. It's very rare to see an unkillable Pokemon that just boosts their defenses succeed. Keep in mind that Pokemon like this are very vulnerable to critical hits. Critical hits not only raise the damage of the move, but they also ignore anything that might lower the move's damage. These are things like defensive buffs on the target Pokemon or offensive drops on the Pokemon using the move. This is also things like screens. All of these things are ignored by critical hits. So in this case, the best defense really is sort of an unstoppable offense, because it's too often that you'll see your unkillable Pokemon get hit by a crit, and then you've lost all of your momentum and your game plan. Keep in mind, though, that setting up a Pokemon is sort of inherently a high-risk, high-reward activity. Because of that, Pokemon like this are usually paired with support Pokemon that can really help protect them while they're vulnerable and still setting up. Things like Fake Out or Follow Me or Rage Powder are very helpful in situations like this. And finally, recovery moves. Recovery moves typically do really well on Pokemon that are naturally very bulky and want to more gradually chip away at their opponents. So a Pokemon can usually make good use of a recovery move if you expect most neutral attacks to do at best 40% of their damage, right? So Pokemon that can use recovery moves well would be things like Dusclops, or Porygon 2 uses recover very well as well. Or maybe even something like Umbreon. And finally, I've been hinting at it all video, we need to talk about speed control. If your team does not have speed control, it is not going to be able to win consistently, okay? And when I say speed control, I mean moves that alter the speed stats of your Pokemon or otherwise change the order in which the Pokemon move during a turn. And you want speed control to go in your favor, because attacking before your opponent gives you a ginormous advantage. I cannot say this enough. If you can attack your opponent's Pokemon and knock them out before they get a chance to attack you, then they're never hitting you. They're not doing damage. They're not giving you status conditions or other secondary effects. You control the pace of the game if you are moving first. Remember that in the last video, I talked about reducing luck or variance in this gameplay, and moving first is a huge part of that. If you move before your opponent, you're not getting flinched by Rock Slide, you're not getting paralyzed by Thunder, you're not getting frozen by Ice Beam, because you are moving first. So a very common method of speed control is Tailwind. When Tailwind goes up, your team's side of the field has their speed doubled for 4 turns. And this move is typically used best by Pokemon that are either very, very fast or that they can use the move Tailwind with some kind of priority. This is things like Whimsicott with Prankster or Talonflame with the ability Gale Wings. The next most common form of speed control is Trick Room, and Trick Room is really simple. It reverses the speed order of the Pokemon for 5 turns. So for 5 turns, the slowest Pokemon will move first and the fastest Pokemon will move last. So remember that Trick Room has a priority of -7, so it will always move last in the turn. So typically, you need a little bit of setup to get the move off. Usually it's Fake Out or something like Follow Me or Rage Powder to protect your Trick Room setter and allow them to really get that move off. Next up is speed drops, and this usually is something like a support move, a utility move, like Icy Wind, Electro Web, sometimes Bulldoze. All of these are spread moves that will affect both of the opposing Pokemon and lower all of their speed by 1 stage. So speed dropping moves are really powerful when your opponent is unwilling or unable to switch their Pokemon out. Usually this is most in effect in the late game, because remember that stat drops can be removed by switching a Pokemon off of the field and then bringing it back onto the field. So this type of speed control is not permanent. A type of speed control that is more permanent is speed boosts. So in the Dynamax format, Max Airstream is great speed control, but other than Max Airstream, it can be difficult to find moves that raise speed. But if you can find a good Pokemon that can consistently raise its speed with something like Dragon Dance or Quiver Dance, there's a good chance you can find a great niche for it in the meta. Speed boost can come in other ways that don't rely on setup moves. Typically, it's going to be something like using a Choice Scarf, which remember that a Choice Scarf will increase the speed of your Pokemon by 1.5 times, but you can't change moves after you enter the field. You can only use the same move every turn. Another way you could raise your speed would be something weather-based, so you can use one of the weather abilities like Swift Swim, Sand Rush, chlorophyll, or slush rush. These are really powerful, but they require you to maintain control of the weather, which can be difficult in a more weather-dominated meta. And then finally, priority moves are also a great way to maintain speed control. Because priority moves bypass other forms of speed control, they move before most other moves on the field. So usually they're going to trade this extra priority for lower base power. +1 priority moves typically are much lower damage dealing moves than a move with a 0 priority, meaning just the normal priority. A good example of this is Rillaboom. It has great bulk, pretty good typing, and a lot of helpful priority moves. So it does get Fake Out, which remember has a +3 priority the first turn you're on the field, but it also gets the very powerful Grassy Glide. Combined with its ability Grassy Surge, this means that Rillaboom can come onto the field, set up its own grassy terrain, and remember that on grassy terrain, Grassy Glide gets a +1 priority. So not only is this a fairly powerful move at, I believe, 70 base power, but it gets the same type attack bonus, which boosts its power by 50%. Plus, when you're on grassy terrain with that priority boost, you also get a 30% damage boost to grass type moves on that terrain. So Rillaboom can actually do quite a bit of damage with this priority move, which can make it difficult to deal with. So that was just a quick little discussion about some more in-depth team building topics. Make sure you drop a comment down below if there's anything else in particular you would like to hear me talk about. Any questions that you have about team building, I would love to address them in the next video. Remember that if you want to see more videos like this, make sure to like this video so that I know you want to see more like it, and subscribe so that you can catch the next video when it comes out. I'll see y'all later. Bye!